talked about this triangle a few times. You've heard it in the morning. We talk about AI, we talk about energy security and market. The last part of the triangle is supply chain resilience and critical materials. And these are challenging times globally, as we know, and that's why we're going to bring the Innovation Authority, government investment, and industry to come up and discuss resiliency. Now, I don't think the debate is any there anymore where it's, are we an energy tech nation? I think it's evident by everyone in this room. But how can we take that same approach in duplicating deep tech into energy and energy to then materials? Can we be a raw materials country? So I would like to bring up Ronit Esho, Senior Director, Head of Climate Tech and Mature Industry, Israel Innovation Authority, Gidon Friedman, CTO, Net Zero Tech Ventures, Yael Barash Harman, Head of R&D, Chief Scientist Office, Ministry of Energy and Infrastructure, Ben Ruvini, Head of Strategic Investments and Venture Partnerships, Israel Honda Accelerator Ventures, and Noah Yang, Senior Sustainability Innovation Manager, Connect, and lots of companies and lots of titles. This is going to be an interesting one. And moderated by Arod Balisa, Ecosystem Insights and Solutions Leader, Deloitte Catalyst.
Have you forgotten about me?
No, you're the best for last.
Hi, everyone. Oh, wow, sorry. That's a bit louder than I thought. Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I know we're post-lunch, so we will try to keep it energetic and interesting and also provocative. You promised me provocation. To follow up on what was said just a minute ago, the critical minerals are not only in our cars and in our batteries, but they're literally all over the news over the last couple of months. Usually when we talk about critical minerals, we talk about security and we talk about resilience, but really minerals are incredibly important for energy. And if we want clean, abundant, and cheap energy, we definitely need minerals and lots of them. And if you've been following the news that's happening, it almost kind of feels like, a Cold War-esque movie where, you've got a rival and you've got a hidden treasure and there's a lot of competing interests, and there's also heroes to this movie. Hopefully some people of you in the audience are part of the heroes of that story. But if you're following the news, it kind of sounds like a movie, but if you think about it, it really isn't. This is an industry, it's a very difficult and challenging industry with a lot of bottlenecks and a lot of challenges. Supply, demand, innovation, it's all out there. And one of the things we'll be talking about in 1 second is really how do you secure mineral supply? How do you create demand? And also, what do you need in order to innovate in this space? And so we've got a wonderful panel, I promise you all it's going to be an interesting discussion, and hopefully we're going to also argue with each other a little bit to make it interesting. And so just before I kind of ask the panelists to introduce themselves, I'll just briefly introduce myself. So I'm Arod. I am a senior manager at Deloitte. Most of my days focused on startup partnerships and kind of have been coordinating critical minerals in our local firm. I come from a practice called Deloitte Catalyst, which is our startups and ecosystem practice, and I encourage you to come to us and talk to us. I promise you it'll be interesting. And so without further ado, I'd like to start with a brief round of introductions to the panel. And what I'll ask you is, tell us your name, your role, where you're from, and also what are you most either excited or concerned about when it comes to minerals?
Thank you, Rod, and happy to be here. I'm Ronit Eshel. I'm heading the National Climate Tech Program for the Israel Innovation Authority. Within this role, we're looking at the development of the ecosystem, the Israeli ecosystem for climate technologies in 8 different sectors. Energy is definitely one of them, and trying to de-risk and bring to the table new innovation coming from Israel to the global world. And I'm definitely excited about the technologies. As a materials engineer, I'm super excited to hear about the new alternatives and the technologies coming into critical minerals. And maybe somebody would like to challenge that.
Wonderful. So, hi everyone. This is Noah Yang. I'm representing Connect, which actually the full name is Connect with the Volkswagen Group, because we are the innovation hub of the VW Group that we have been around since 2018. Yeah, quite, I think, a long journey so far that we started with very typical mobility innovation topics. And I think for the past 3 years, when I joined, I started to take over the topic of sustainability because, of course, it's important to everybody sitting in this room, but we're also trying to find an angle to make it applicable, economically feasible, and actually make it really green. So what I'm actually really excited and also scared a little bit with the critical mineral topic, I think in the audience you have a lot of startup that's working on it, which is great. However, I learned in a very hard way that automotive and we are at least 7 years away from each other. I do want to validate your technology. However, I do not have the ability to produce magnets in the China independent supply chain, which now becoming a requirement. So if you have an idea how to make that happen, I mean, we work together. I'll be happy to know and happy to learn from Ben since, we're from the similar position.
Yeah, good afternoon. I'm happy to be here and thanks for inviting me. Gidon Friedman, I'm the CTO at Net Zero. We are an investment fund working together with the Israeli Innovation Authority, investing in early stage startups. And we also build companies, do venture creation. And we are happy, first of all, to listen to anyone here who has an idea, early stage project, or things like that. And we happen to have, by the way, almost half of our startups are involved with materials. We found out that actually very good ideas around here in materials, and so we took quite a number of them, and I'm very happy to have more.
Hello everyone, Ben Reuveni. I'm heading Honda Accelerator Ventures here in Israel. Like Noah, we are looking for automotive technologies and automotive startups, and specifically in this topic of the panel, solutions that will help us to detach from the traditional supply chain, which is challenging for us, for a Japanese car manufacturer.
Thank you. My name is Dr. Yael Harman. I'm the head of R&D in the Chief Scientist Office in the Ministry of Energy. So in the aspect of critical minerals, I'm most afraid of the fact that there's a race and we didn't even wake up to wear our shoes. So I'm worried that we won't be in the race. In 2025, the ministry wrote a strategic paper about critical minerals. And in 2026, we, in our R&D program, we put a lot of emphasis on critical minerals together with the Innovation Authority and with the Ministry of Education. Not education, in the Ministry of in the Ministry of Science, yes, Science and Technology. So with both of them, we did different collaboration. We always invested in companies that take us less independent on critical minerals, but I think you have, when you need to deal with something, you have to look at it and be really talking about it and not just on the side topics. So.
Fantastic. I do want to start off with you both, Ben and Noah, as kind of the representatives of the consumers of critical minerals. And I'd like to get your perspective and how do you view the kind of last couple of years and months in the kind of changing macro environment of minerals, and how do you also see the role of your companies in, kickstarting the market, if you will, as demand generators?
Okay, I will start. So I think as Volkswagen Group is a pretty big, major car maker, if you simply look at the number, we're number 2 in the world. Just in 2025, we shipped, I think, almost 9 million vehicles, and almost 1 million of them are actually electric vehicle. And for those of you who don't know, we are very much heavily depending on critical minerals and also now more on the rare earth element, especially when it comes to electrification. You can't have a car without an e-drive. You can't have an e-drive without rare earth element. So the issue really, I think, got to us and also to the upper management, because that's usually how you drive changes in organizations, in our size, is that, wow, crisis, crisis, crisis everywhere. Okay, this automaker in the US has stopped manufacturing for a few months and they have lost millions of dollars. And then we're like, oh, we are actually very close. So then they started to set up some sort of like task forces, like how can we create a strategy to procure the rare earth element and other critical minerals in the long run. So we're still in the planning stage. But at the same time, I, as an innovation person, I was like, I can't wait until you have the strategy ready. I need to start working on something. So I initiated and put together, with the help of a lot of industry players and startup, a consortium that we will be probably the first of its kind, I think, in many regions to validate such a value chain really existed. Because the challenge is not in, it is also in the extraction or urban mining technology, but actually after you mined it, after you have the oxide, what do? Do you have anybody to do the refining? Can you have a lawyer? Can you have a magnet maker that can make it happen? We're still answering a lot of the questions, and I don't know if I have all the answer, but I'm happy to sitting here to share with you all my learning and also my struggles, because maybe it's common, right, Ben?
Can I join the Buyers Club as well?
I'm very much. Let's talk after.
Ben? Ben, you promised me a provocation.
Two aspects to this question. On one hand, we do have a lot of interest in securing critical minerals and making sure we have enough material to work with when it comes to EVs and so on. We actually invested in the past in a lithium recycling company from Germany, and yesterday we announced an investment in Niron Magnetics, a US company who is allowing to create e-motors without magnets or without other rare earth materials. So this exists, and this is part of our mission statement when it comes to investing. On the other hand, and that's the new reality, the market is not there. Honda announced it will cancel their upcoming plans to launch electric vehicle models. A lot of R&D money is now on pause. We will not use whatever investment we've made in order to launch those models, and the reason being the market haven't adopted this. The pre-sales haven't, specifically in North America, haven't met our expectations, and Honda decided to put a pause on it. This actually means maybe critical minerals like lithium or, again, e-motors are not a high demand at the moment, and maybe will have to be delayed in a few years.
Gideon, do you want to retort?
I have a remark.
All right.
Some would say that we wish that Ferrari wouldn't go EV. If you know what happened with the latest launch of the Ferrari, just have a look at it.
Okay then. I do not follow the automotive market that much. No, but thank you. Gideon, I want to piggyback on Ben's comment about the market, and I think as an investor and as a venture builder, what do you think is investable today, and what do you think is not?
So first of all, I have to answer a little bit outside my investment scope.
Sure, go ahead.
I don't believe that EVs will not rule the market quite soon. Certainly after this crisis that we had with the Iran war, the price of gasoline has gone up so much that EV is much more reasonable. It's also much less susceptible to supply issues. It's generated locally, certainly from if it's from renewable energies. And I think the Japanese manufacturers are making a mistake. Toyota also concentrated
just
before.
today.
Yes, but this is my personal belief. I will write on LinkedIn about this. I do think the EV is here to stay and big, and it's going to rule the market pretty soon. Unrelated to that, so what can we do with respect to minerals? First of all, I'm not a prophet. So what we usually do in Israel is we try to find the technologies that are available. And here, in this case, Net Zero are putting together a second competition for startups or early stage startups and academic projects. It's called Labs for Minerals, similar to our Labs for Climate from last year. And by the way, last year, one of the winners got an investment from us of 6.5 million shekels, so it's quite worthwhile to participate in this competition. We do this competition together with Evonik and Tenova. Tenova Israel is part of Techint, a big corporate, and also potentially with Deloitte, hopefully.
You heard it here first.
You
heard it here first.
Okay, and so this competition will try to entice people to present what they have, because it's not so easy sometimes to find it. However, if we try to find the different segments in the market, we can talk about minerals. There is several stages. Let's say there is the exploration stage. You have to find where the minerals are. Then you have to try to extract the minerals, and finally, let's say, refine the separate materials. So if you look at these segments and what Israel could potentially be strong in, I would say exploration is mostly information, and that there is, I think, a good potential for Israel to propose at least a few ideas. I would love to see the Geological Survey participate more in the industrial part of things. Also from my position at the Ministry of Energy, we were a little bit frustrated often that they are very academic, but it's an opportunity for them to start to participate in the industry. So there is a Geological Survey in Israel, there is strength, there is also, after the gas discoveries here, there's a lot of knowledge around in Israel about exploration, so it's a good potential, I would say. The extraction is quite difficult because these are big projects, and it's very difficult to get into the process and present something that's very, very industrialized. But we are trying, by the way, in one of our companies. And the refining process also, there is a decent potential, because often it will be electrochemistry or chemistry, and I think there is strength in Israel in these areas.
Yael, I want to go to you and maybe focus on a bit of a different topic, well, related topic, and that is, how do you see critical minerals connect to Israel's broader energy agenda?
Okay, so first I want to add to what Gideon said, is also the alternatives are very important, and in this actually we have a lot of strength in replacing those critical minerals and rare critical minerals in different alternatives. And we have the storage center, the electrochemical energy center that actually sits in Bar Ilan, that is doing a lot in that field. Now, Israel as a whole, I think we in the last year, or like 12 months, let's say, we've been focusing on critical minerals because we saw all the geopolitics issues. And then there are interministerial meetings, and each one takes their own path. So if it's the foreign ministry, they would like to sign agreements to secure a supply in case of war, or to make sure we're part of the game. We in the Chief Scientist Office say that what we can give to bring to the table as a negotiation point is our knowledge, is our head. So we can offer technology as part of this securing the supply chain. So if we have like chips for data centers. So if we go into this field and we bring the knowledge and the technology, we can have a ticket in the game. Of course, the Ministry of Finance is doing deals to secure procurement, to buy ahead of time, so in case of war. So each one is taking a different direction, and the point is together maybe we'll have all the open spots covered.
Before I continue to Ronit, anybody want to comment on that? I tried. Ronit, I want to ask you about where do you see the kind of, if you had to pick one or two areas where you really believe that Israel has an advantage, and you say that's where we should focus on, what would it be? And if you can, what shouldn't we do?
Okay, so I think, of course, Yael touched on that as well. I think that, our best game is in the brains of the value chain, and bringing technology into that brain. I think that we have good strengths in electrochemistry, as said, alternative materials, but definitely the full layer of the digitalization, the cyber. There's a lot of work being done on the defense area and security of the value chain in critical minerals. And so the optimization and using of AI to optimize the sources that are required. So there's two parts where we see the brains of the value chain of the critical minerals. One is in optimizing the use of critical minerals in semiconductor, in the different applications, the batteries and so forth, and reducing the need for critical minerals, and at the same time creating the alternatives that will be able to create a broader, not a single source in the world for the sources of the critical minerals. So that would be kind of the two things that we would go by. And these are the things that we're trying to push. On one hand, we're working, there's actually, in Israel, there's quite a few semiconductor global partners in Israel. So we're trying to work with them on the optimization of use, and at the same time working with about 50 different researchers, 50 different startup companies on bringing in the value of the aspects of the different value chain in critical minerals, and bring in new technology, breakthrough technologies that will be fostered around the globe. So not working on extraction specifically, because it's not here, but working on how do we actually bring in the brains to the full value chain.
I like that answer. I think that there are specific challenges in exploration that are hard to replicate when you're away from the mines. But I think we've heard from each of our speakers a few areas like separation and alternatives. Ben, as a kind of, when you're kind of evaluating companies, you mentioned this, I think, in your previous answer, talked a little bit about some of the companies you've invested in. What are the key things you're looking for and you're assessing when you're thinking about partnering with some of these critical minerals companies? And what would you say, if you can say, what's unique about this that you would look, for example, in a company in that space that you wouldn't in any other space?
So we look for companies with really deep technology, which serves as a barrier for entry. So we won't go for something that it's easy to replicate. We really look for a technological edge.
Cloud Code for minerals.
Again?
You wouldn't invest in Cloud Code for minerals.
No, unfortunately. But I would say, for critical minerals specifically, I'm personally a strong believer in recycling. I think it's a two-in-one. It's obviously addresses the supply chain challenge, but also helps us and the future regulation handle circular economy requirements. To the people who don't know, it's expected that the regulation will force manufacturers to take full responsibility for everything they produced. So if we're looking on a hybrid car, putting aside EVs, there is a battery there. And 10, 15, 20 years after production, you, Honda, or other car manufacturer have to take full responsibility for this waste. Now, this waste costs you money only to gather back to your facility. The idea of recycling and making it recapture its value is a two-in-one solution. Helps you both on the supply chain and on the environmental impact. So that's our direction, I would say, as being reflected in our investments.
Got it. Noah, yes, of course.
Just,
Only if you disagree.
I will join with recycling. It was also mentioned before, a startup or a company needs to focus on what they can get from the product. And if they just play a component in the system, there's very little value. In the recycling business, there is, in my opinion, a much higher chance of extracting value from the product as compared to, let's say, the minerals in general, where giant players in giant projects, there's very little chance for a startup to actually extract value. So recycling is also good for the company, I think.
I disagree.
Nah, I have a question for you.
Yeah, I just want to wake people up. Okay, argument. So yes, actually I do agree, sorry, for the jump scare. However, I mean, very much resonating with what Ben said here. I think if there's one thing that actually makes it harder or actually more opportunities for innovation is that I'm representing an EU car maker, and we're talking about EU regulations. So yeah, if we're looking about producer responsibility in Europe, there's going to be in 2031 called End of Life Vehicle Directive that mandates 25% of the new car needs to come with post-consumer recyclate, and there's a whole set of rules of what is considered post-consumer recyclate, and 25% of that is going to be closed loop. Fun time. We're not there yet. I don't know how we're going to get there. Probably we're going to pay some fines in the first years, but a lot of technology in the rare earth elements and the critical minerals are going to go there. However, I also love the idea of recycling closed loop. What I have learned actually from that project I mentioned earlier of really validating the closed loop coming from car and ending up in car. The first challenge we encountered was actually to free the magnet from e-drives. We, as a automotive group, we have more than 10 brands. We actually sent one of the best, top tier, dismantler in UK, 3 different e-drives. One is hybrid, so let's say that's not really a fair comparison. They look completely different, so different geometries, and magnets are, I say, glued to the e-drives using the most indestructible epoxy adhesive. In the end, I think it took them like 30-something hours to use a hammer to take out all the magnets. And imagine doing that in a scale. So this is also, you know, of course, if you are working on something enabling, let's say, freeing the magnet from the feedstock, or anything, you know, just from the side, vis-a-vis. It doesn't have to be really you do the refinery, because a lot of time, the bottleneck is not in the places we think, oh, wow, chemistry, solvent, energy intensive. If you have a robot that could be used in the dismantler, very cheap, very durable, it's completely different from what you see in the lab, that's also a call for proposal, let me know, because that could be really the game changer, and it goes back to the critical mineral as well.
Just in kind of managing the time, because that is pretty much what I do here. I want to just shift gear for a second and ask both Yael and Ronit about the role of government, and I want to be more specific. Each from your perspective, you both represent different branches of government, and I want to get your kind of opinion on where should the government intervene, how it should help support, assuming that critical minerals are important for the Israeli innovation ecosystem, assuming it's important in general, how would you say the government can help support, and what kind of quote-unquote market failure is it trying to correct? Let's start with you.
So now I'll represent the Ministry of Energy and myself. So it won't happen what I think should be done. But theoretically, the problem is that if no one is buying, then no one will produce. So theoretically, if we would encourage recycling or encourage extracting different technology like better extraction methods, and we will be willing to pay for the product, then there will be a business, there will be an incentive. I think the problem is that there's no incentive to produce this technology because the problem is not here yet and no one will pay for it, even not Honda and Volkswagen. Like, they won't pay, no one will pay. So if no one is paying, it won't exist, and I don't think the government is going to do that. We will give money to a startup. In a 50% of the grant they will need to bring home, which they'll probably go to Honda, maybe they'll give them 20, they will give them, and in the end they'll suffer because no one will buy their product. So my point is, I wish we would buy. If we would buy, there would be a market.
Okay. Yes.
Tough crowd.
Yeah, so I think definitely us, the Israel Innovation Authority, it's not specifically the government, but we look at 3 ways in which we can support the growth of this ecosystem. When we look at growth of ecosystem, we're looking at it as the, the accumulation of knowledge and building the right infrastructure for technologies to rise here and go global, okay, and to produce back to Israel the right advantage into the Israeli economy. We can do that in 3 different ways. One is we de-risk financing at very early stage to make sure that the highest breakthrough technologies are coming out of Israel and can compete globally with all the biggest players that there are and win globally. So we de-risk financing of new technologies at early stage. We do that with the startup fund. We do that with other tracks that are meant specifically to help those startups when they're coming out of research and starting the path all the way to round A, and de-risk their financing so that the private market can walk in and help them go to the next stage. The other thing we do is we try to help scale. And you talked about it, Noah, and I think it's very, very true. It's true to all climate technologies, definitely in energy. It's very hard to scale those new technologies. And we do that by helping startups demonstrate their technologies in real life solutions. We approach corporates that want to build demonstration sites, and we also grant grants to startups that want to do the pilots and demonstrate their technologies in real life evidence, and that helps them to make it to the next step. We also help whoever wants to build a manufacturing site in Israel. We also give grants to move from R&D to production. So we have those grants as well. So all the way of the value chain, we can help with de-risking and financing those steps in the role of technology. The other thing we do is we try to create the best effective environment for startups to grow, and that is when we work with the Ministry of Energy, we work with the Ministry of Environment, we work with all the different ministries. We open calls. We try to work on regulatory sandboxes and make sure that the environment is right for those startups to handle all the obstacles that they will carry out while they grow. And these are the things that we do to push it so that the private market can feel more comfortable to take these technologies and go global with them.
So I want to piggyback on that and ask both Gideon and Noah, from the lab to scale. And Gideon, for you back a lot of it's called emerging research. It's coming out of universities and being spun out. And Noah, you focus a lot of energy and time on making sure that these companies can work and pilot their technologies. And I want to get your kind of perspective on how do you do that? Ronit talked about the role of government in de-risking. How do you guys see in practice getting those companies from lab to scale?
So first of all, we are looking at the team very closely. We really expect to have in the team people with industrial experience. This is a number one priority, because it's not enough to develop the technology and demonstrate the technology. You need from day one, from the early stages, to design it to be scalable. And only people who have been in the industry and understand that, and understand what makes sense and what does not make sense from day one. What's too complicated just doesn't work at scale. And so we look at the team, we try to find the experienced people. Not so easy always, because often people coming from the industry are not so much into innovation and trying new things. They're more conservative. But yes, this is an important point. I will say, in terms of the government support also, in this field, in energy, but certainly in materials, the chance of having the plant in Israel is very, very low. Eventually, the actual production will be outside of Israel, because Israel is so small. And often it does not make sense to do the logistics from the plant in Israel to wherever the customer is. It will have to be somewhere else. And so the support cannot be dependent on production in Israel. We can do maybe sometimes pilot plant in Israel, but really to be real, production will be outside of Israel 99% of the time, and the government has to understand that. So the value will come from the fact, the value to Israel will come from the fact that we have the engineering here, we have the brains here, and we also sell these companies eventually. We are a startup generating nation, unfortunately, so in some cases we can pull it to big companies, to large companies, but in hardware, materials, it's not going to work.
No?
So I wish I had this winning formula for all my cases. Of course, I am very blessed that I have many successful projects in this area. However, it is really, really case by case. So I wanted to share from what I learned from the success, and also leave a little bit positivity to the end of a point that has not been touched today on this stage. I think, as I mentioned before, extraction or refining, or a startup doesn't do everything, right? It touches a single point, and then you use that point to attract investor to back you up, and then you use the same deck to attract me to pay you for a POC. However, in the reality is, if you are only a single startup that doesn't have all the supply chain, even to validate that, if you are hoping for me to bring you the industry player, it's going to take much longer. It's not going to happen. People are just going to be tired, because innovation is already very risky. You, as a startup, will try to de-risk it as much as possible. What I have learned, an easy way, easy money, is government grants, either Horizon or other one that Israeli startups are eligible for. It's a good way, because once you have a consortium, people are committed, at least on paper, right? You have those quarterly meetings, at least you can grab those people quarterly. In other cases, they're just going to be gone. They'll ghost you, they're going to answer you, oh, this looks interesting, but that's not enough. By giving some incentives, like if you put your time or in kind, there's going to be another 50% coming from EU, Israel, that works much better. However, I think there's also another way of validation, which is, again, very, very privileged that I'm representing Connect. We are part of Group Innovation. Like, just by the name, you could tell we are the innovation people. We're a bit crazy. We have a lot of biochemists. We have a bioengineering department, which means if you have crazy idea, the person you should be talking to should be us, because we are actually looking into biomining, bioleaching, phytomining, having some plans to actually exploit the nickel from the soil. That's something that we can do. We understand the risk. We also have biologies, biodiversity expert that actually can tell you what we're looking for. And then from there, we're going to go to the procurement guy saying like, hey, you're interested in plant mined nickel. Let me tell you that by doing so, first of all, price-wise competitive, it's doable, it can do in a scale, and we're not gonna kill all the birds in South Africa by doing that. All they need is to have all these boxes checked, and the innovation team is definitely the right one to use. And please, I think, appreciate us because not all the corporates are still putting all the resources in innovation. I hope we can do this as long as possible together with Ben, hopefully.
I'm getting angry looks at not angry, but forceful. So usually we do a kind of a close-up, but I think out of kind of respect for the next panel, we'll pause here. I wanted to thank all of you for your insights, for your thoughts, and for an occasional disagreement. I wanted them, so thank you. And thank you all for kind of listening to the wonderful insights from the panelists, and hope you all are now at this panel with the shared enthusiasm we all have for minerals and materials. And with that, I think we'll close it. Thank you once again, and see you.